All right. So this is an episode of Laura Ingraham that aired on March the 17th. And towards the end of this of the episode, there were a couple of segments that I really wanted to comment on. And what you're seeing right here is where she had her buddy Raymond Arroyo on there, and he was kind of talking about the Grammys. And one segment of the Grammys, one performance that he brought up was Little Baby's performance, where Little Baby was basically talking about the whole Black Lives Matter, police brutality, George Floyd kind of a thing. And what's interesting about this performance, I mean, among other things, is obviously, I mean, first of all, just like it says here in the header, it basically is just feeding into the this Black Lives Matter, cops are killing black men left and right narrative that the mainstream media and the mainstream press that wants to keep selling on us. I mean, this is a total corporate globalist mainstream narrative, but for some reason, these people who are speaking out in favor of it think that they're fighting the system. It's the most ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I'm so sick of it. And as many black conservatives have pointed out, we want to always get up in arms when a cop kills a black man, but when a black kills another black, there's almost no protest, no outrage, nothing. So again, if you care about black lives, you care about who's killing them, regardless of the color of the killer. If you care about black lives, I mean, that's the bottom line. So it's a total psychological operation, and the fact that so many people have latched onto it just should let you know that we're headed in the wrong. That this society in America is basically headed down the crapper. But anyway, all that said, what's interesting about this clip, which I can't even really play either because again of copyright reasons, they had to shorten the song overall because of time constraints. But one I saw it on YouTube where a commenter made a good point, and I'm going to show you the lyrics to the song here. I'm going to click to another tab. So here are all the lyrics of the full song. The song is, by the way, called "The Bigger Picture." So it's called "The Bigger Picture" by Lil Baby. And again, like I said, they had to shorten it because of time. So a lot of these lyrics weren't in the performance on the Grammys. But one line that should have been, and I think this commenter made the point, and I agree with him, is that every colored ain't dumb. Here it is. I highlighted it. Every color person ain't dumb, and all whites are not racist. I be judging by the mind and heart. I ain't really into faces. So there you go. He just literally says, all whites not racist. I be judging by the mind. Here we go. I be judging by the mind and heart. I ain't really into faces. So just in those two lines there, that's actually a unifying message. Okay, all this other stuff talking about, the cops and I'm scared and they're picking me off because I'm black and they're singling me out because I'm black. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's just not based on facts. It's just not true. It's based off of a false narrative. But these two lines right here actually are quite unifying because it says, look, you can't paint all groups by one brush. In those two lines, you can't paint you can't paint an entire group by one stroke, by the actions of one or two people. I mean, that just seems logical, but that's literally what we're doing now. We're taking a small minority of actors and using that to paint an entire group. Or at least that's what the mainstream narratives are doing, right now. That's what they try to do. But anyway, that really wasn't about this. It's really about the segment after that segment. So I'm gonna go back to this clip and play a little bit, and then we'll get to the segment that I really want to talk about, which is when Laura Ingraham has Robert Woodson on.
Into a building which quickly burned. Now, Laura, this is really a kind of revolutionary fantasia set to music, teaching young people something really insidious, mainly that cops are wantonly killing young black men and that violence, even burning neighborhoods, is a legitimate form of protest.
Which is true, which is basically a repeat of what I just said. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just not based on the data. And I'm not going to play it, but, Robert Woodson gets into it actually when I'm going to fast forward this part because even Dr. Woodson gets into it. I believe he's a doctor. But let me now just pay attention for a little while because I need to play the story that she's bringing up here and why she brings Woodson on to talk about it. So let me kind of back up here.
Unbelievable. Thank you, Rand. And just yesterday, a man with no family at all to mourn him. He died after being set on fire, allegedly by two teenagers in New York's Rochester. I had Bob Woodson on the voiceless victims and why we see an increasing suffer in silence, or even worse. I want to tell you about Stephen Ammenhauser, a 53-year-old native of Texas living alone in Rochester, New York. After returning to his apartment on Friday, Stephen was set upon by two assailants who ended up dousing him in a flammable liquid, then setting him on fire. He died in the hospital just yesterday, but the story gets even more tragic.
He's originally was adopted, and unfortunately there was no family in his life at the time of his death. So the reason I'm telling you a little bit about him, because there's nobody else to speak for him. I have seen a lot. There's a few cases that stick out. Seeing the pictures of this guy and then knowing that he has no family around just to speak for him. I can't. This is one that I'll remember.
Stephen's death is a terrible window into our increasingly depraved culture. Why is this happening? Because the alleged assailants are two teenage boys, age 16 and 14. According to the police, the 14-year-old had been arrested 3 times in the last 7 months. Joining me now is Bob Woodson, civil rights activist, founder of the Woodson Center. Bob, the crime points to a more pervasive rot in our society.
So hopefully you caught all those details. So again, just as a quick recap, he was alone. He lived alone. He had no family in the area, and he was. They basically, it sounds like they poured like gasoline on him or something flammable and set him to fire. And these were teenagers. I think she said 16 and 14. So we've got teenagers, and she didn't say the race of them. I don't know. I mean, the fact that Bob Woodson is on to talk about it, I think that should kind of allude to the fact that these perpetrators, these alleged perpetrators, were Black males. I think that's kind of assumed, just the fact that he's on here. So we're going to say this is basically a case of Black on white violence, which again, I'm going to say this. You don't see him much on the YouTube, on YouTube and all the major channels anymore, because he's one of those that got, purged. He's one of these content creators that got purged years ago. But if you look up Colin Flaherty, okay, and then his last name is Flaherty, Flaherty, yeah. And if you look up Colin Flaherty, up until about 2016 or so, he had a whole slew of videos of Black on white violence, Black on Asian violence, Black on everybody violence. And it was just, he was trying to make the point that, look, these news, our mainstream press is suppressing the fact that when it comes to violent crime, it is, Blacks are committing it at a disproportional rate. I mean, that's a fact. Now, why are they doing that? That's another discussion for another time. But just to deny that simple fact that they're committing these crimes of these vicious attacks of violent crime, just assaulting random people on the street, and robbery and all these other sorts of, like very depraved behavior. The fact that we sort of like keep looking the other way, but when a white cop does something to a Black man, we've got protests and buildings are being burned in cities across the street. The level of hypocrisy is just ridiculous. And again, when you understand what we're dealing with a satanic globalist agenda at the highest levels. So again, whatever supports that agenda gets supported by the mainstream, and whatever does not support that agenda gets suppressed by the mainstream. So this is, so the hypocrisy is one thing, but people don't understand the bigger picture. Hey, not to rip off Little Baby, but there's a bigger picture involved, and it's not what Little Baby's talking about. The bigger picture is the globalist agenda, is the satanic cults that manipulate world events in order to consolidate power, in order to divide the people and have humanity literally fighting against each other when they're all being enslaved and they're all being put under greater and greater tyranny, while they're busy while they're busy pointing the fingers at each other over issues such as race and class and in things that issues that are not actually issues. So anyway, I made my point, but let me I'm saying all that to kind of set up what Robert Woods is going to say. So now I'm going to be quiet for a while and really just play this clip probably to the end, and then I'll comment at the end of it.
Does it not?
It really does, and it's unfortunate. Dr. King said that racism, for instance, isn't bad because it's visited upon blacks by whites. It's bad because it's evil, and we all must unite against evil. But we're not uniting against evil. When you talked about this poor man, well, there have been 68 blacks killed by other blacks since the death of George Floyd. The last one was a 7-year-old girl in Indianapolis shot to death in front of her mother. And he killed 3 other family members. But yet this doesn't get reported. There is a hole in the heart of Americans, a moral and spiritual free fall that we're in that is consuming people, even in wealthy suburbs of Silicon Valley, where the teenage suicide rate is 6 times the national average. The leading cause of death is homicide in black communities. Baltimore is more dangerous than Afghanistan. And low-income whites are dying in record numbers for drug overdoses. But we can't come together to address this free fall because that hole in the hearts of people being filled with hatred, and it's being filled with tribalism.
Everything he said was absolutely brilliant and true. So again, what did he just point at? He just pointed at homicides, suicides, drug overdoses. All right. This points to, as he said, a spiritual, moral hole. This is a soul. This is a problem of spiritual, godless, soulless lives. These are people who have lost connection with their spirit and their soul, and these are deaths of despair, and these are deaths of fear, and these are deaths of absolute disconnection from life. It's evil. Just the word he used. It is evil, and it is by design. We are being led into an evil, a more morally bankrupt, a more spiritually bankrupt, a generally evil death cult society. And we're being led that way at the highest levels by, I hesitate to even call them people, but I will. At the highest levels, we're talking about all these secret society types, all these Bilderberg, globalists, World Economic Forum type, again, the ones who at the end, even the people that I'm naming aren't even necessarily the very top of the chain, but at the very top of the food chain, you're dealing with forces that hate humanity, and they want humanity to die, and they want humanity to kill each other and to hate each other and to hate themselves and to kill themselves. That's what they want for us, and they are using manipulation. They are manipulating us through the media, manipulating us by emphasizing lies and suppressing truth. And that's the game that's being played. And he nails it. I mean, like, to have this segment on where he just literally he gets beyond the whole hypocrisy thing. I mean, we keep talking about hypocrisy, but the point is, the reason that it may seem inconsistent, but it's not. It's consistent with the agenda, which is an anti-human, anti-life, pro-death, pro-hatred, pro-evil agenda. Once you understand that, all of these things start to fit into that puzzle. So that's why when incidents like this happen, trust me, this is what the cult at the highest levels wants. They want to see evil flourish. They want to see good people and innocent people die.
And that's why it's important that for us to find a pathway to peace, we must confront those who would use and weaponize race to keep us from really addressing the fundamental problems facing us, and that is that moral and spiritual emptiness that is consuming people. There are pathways to peace, but but we can't find it if we're kept apart because of race.
Yeah, again, just so to recap this, a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old are in custody.
Exactly. To his point, it is all about divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. That is what's happening. Keep us divided over race, keep us divided over cops. It's all Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. It's the rich versus the poor versus the middle class versus. It's Democrat versus Republican. It's Trump versus anti-Trump. I mean, it's so many divisions that are being stoked and fomented. Mask versus anti-mask. I could go on and on. So again, that's the game. The game is to keep us divided among every single category you can think of. Because meanwhile, we're all being imprisoned, we're all being enslaved, and we're all being led to our own oblivion and destruction and death. So again, unity is the solution, but not the kind of shit that Biden's talking about. He's full of shit. Okay, so anyway, I think that's about it for now.